What's up, guys? Today I'm going to break down how our image ad testing process makes over $560,000 a month like it does for this brand. And it's pretty easy to understand. I'm not going to waste your time at all. It's basically a 3-step process. First one is the hook test. Second step is the transition from the hook test into actual creatives. And then the third step is the iteration process. And I'm going to break down every single one of these 3 steps so you have the entire strategy and you can actually go out here from this video, test your next creative test with significantly higher hit rates as before, and also a lot more system when it comes to the volume. And so what is the hook test, right? Step number 1 is going to be an isolated hook test, which is basically just an image ad test that essentially looks like a 1x1 image ad, which has no background. So just a white background, no product picture, no visual, nothing, just text in the middle. Okay, so what you're gonna do is gonna make a bunch of these. You're gonna make basically how many avatars you have times 10, right? Different awareness stages, different sentence structures, put numbers in them, all these small different things and details that you have to kind of, diversify in all the hooks that you write. Point is volume. Okay, that's the key word here. We wanna have a lot of different hooks. So what you're gonna do is basically make a bunch of these hooks, essentially a bunch of these image ads, put them in the ad account, put them in an ABO, force a little bit of spend on all of them, spend like $2 to $3 every single hook, turn them off each after, and then what you're going to do is you're just going to check which ones have the best click-through rates. The best CTRs is actually what you'll look for, and then you take those ones and transition them into actual creative. So the whole point of us doing this is actually that you have a system and a lot higher hit rates behind it. So you first of all save a lot of money, right, when it comes to immediately testing normal ads and having to spend a lot more on each and every hook that you want to test. Second of all, right, what happens is obviously the hit rates get significantly higher because you actually isolated the most important variable of your image ad, which is the headline or the hook, right? And it's like when you then transition and the ad doesn't work anymore, but it worked from a hook, like in the hook test, then you know exactly that it has to be the visual and it can't be the hook. So you learn a lot from it. I would always recommend doing a hook test, not only once when you test a product or test a new concept, every single time that you introduce anything new, a new concept, a new angle, a new avatar into your ad account, you're going to run a hook test. In fact, at Scale, we constantly run hook tests just because it always just increases the hit rates. There's nothing wrong with doing this constantly every once in a while, again and again and again, just to always refresh like your ad account with the newest, best hooks that actually work the best and kind of extend your winning variable spreadsheet. So this is kind of how that works, right? So after the hook test, you have a couple winners, and the KPIs for that is just going to be like 7%, around 7% click-through rate, and below ideally a $70 CPM. So when you have those 2 KPIs, you're going to then go ahead and transition the winning hooks that you have into actual creatives. Now this is pretty simple as well, because there's pretty much just 4 different types of visuals that you can have on an image ad. You can have a product-focused visual, you can have a problem-focused visual, you can have an outcome-focused visual, and then you can have a mechanism-focused visual. Right? So the product focused visual is the very classic, simple one that most people kind of use and make and whatever. It's just the one where, you see the product picture, maybe an offer on it, maybe the price tag on it, maybe nothing on it, maybe features and benefits on it, right? It really depends. But the point is basically that it's one of the most aware type of concepts, also the highest converting type of concepts, but it's those types of concepts that usually give up the biggest chunk of the actual click-through rate to get a really good conversion rate. So this is kind of the trade-off that you make. The second concept is the opposite, which is going to be more of like the problem-focused visual. So problem-focused visual, you can imagine it like this. It's basically a visual where you have, which has nothing to do with the product. All it has to do with is essentially the problem that people struggle with. So you're supposed to showcase reactions, right? You're supposed to see the emotion in the people, okay? So this is kind of what you want to focus on. Outcome is just the same thing, same awareness-wise, same similar converting, but it's just essentially the positive example. So we could call it the ethical marketing, okay? And then we have the mechanism. So mechanism is either a product in use, an unboxing, a review, a testimonial. It could also be before and afters, problem solution concepts, like myth versus fact, anything you could imagine. Okay, so that's the mechanism one. So the point is that we don't pick one of these. The point is that we have all of these, because just having all of these will introduce something called creative diversity into your ad account, which is going to lead to you actually optimizing and diversifying in a lot of different audience pockets on your account. Meaning what's going to happen realistically is your ad account is going to start to have a lot lower CPMs on average, because every single audience pocket and every concept obviously has completely different CPMs. And therefore, the overall average and the fluctuation will be significantly lower. So this is why we want to introduce creative diversity into your ad account. And this is done by having and launching a lot of concepts, because you can't guess, right? Let's say you find like 3 winning hooks in the hook test. What you're going to do is going to make like 5, 6, 7 different concepts with different types of visuals, and then cycle through all the winning hooks that you have. So all the hooks that at least had a 7% CTR and below a $70 CPM, you're going to now make a bunch of concepts out of this. You'll launch it. Obviously, just follow your rules of kind of like how long, in the history of your ad account, like you had to kind of run the ads before making decisions on them. Completely different for every ad account. I usually recommend spending like break even on every single ad before you actually make the decision and turn something off. Only exception is before that, if you have terrible CPMs, terrible CPCs, whatever it really is, you can already turn it off a lot sooner than that. So the third step, and this is where the interesting part starts, because so far it's something which you probably think, okay, well, pretty easy, pretty simple, but I've already kind of done this maybe in some type of way and it hasn't worked, so why, right? And it misses, like if you only do these two things, you miss one key ingredient, which is the iteration process. And so what is an iteration, right? So an iteration is basically you running something, checking the metrics, and then based off of those metrics, remaking the ad and relaunching it, trying to manipulate that metric. And so specifically what you're going to do is for every test, you're going to look at the top three best performing ads in terms of ROAS, right? So obviously you start at the top metric, which is the return on your ad spend. And then you look on your best ads and then the weakest metrics of each of those ads. So imagine you have one ad that has a 1.8 ROAS, all the others don't have sales at all, and that one got like 3 sales, and it has, let's say the weakest metric is the click-through rate, okay? So now we know it's, first of all, okay, well, it's the best ad. And the second of all, we know that the weakest metric is the click-through rate. So if we fix the click-through rate first, which is the weakest metric currently, then obviously it's going to have the best effect, or overall it's going to have, it's the biggest lever to pull when it comes to making that ad even more profitable. And so what we're going to do and what's going to look like is you're going to basically make iterations trying to make the ad convert a little bit less, because all you do is just balance out constantly CTR and conversion rate. So when you have a CTR issue, what happens likely oftentimes is the conversion rate is too good. And then this is what holds your ad back from scaling super hard. So what you do is you give up a little bit of the conversion rate for a lot higher CTR. And you can do these changes constantly again and again. And you do this with 80% of the ads. So 80% of the stuff that you launch is going to be iterations, only 20% new concepts. And this is the reason why most ad accounts, even though they make revenue, a lot of revenue, are not profitable, because they don't follow the 80-20 rule when it comes to the split between iterations and new concepts. So this is pretty much the very brief, quick little summary of how we actually run our image ads. I want to say thank you so much for giving me your most important asset, which is your attention. Thanks for watching. I wish you a beautiful day.